Then I swung my vision to the left, and as I left that beautiful vista on the right, the grass went from green to brown to black to scorched. And I was really taken by and looking for the technical reason. Why would there be this dichotomy between these two vistas? And that darkness continued to the left and into what seemed to be a crevasse. And I guess I'm just naturally inquisitive. I made a few tentative steps to the left to see what was beyond this chasm. And as I looked down, and it was as though the walls of this chasm were covered with a shiny black coal, anthracite. And as I looked down, the first thing I saw was at the very pit of this, the bottom of this abyss, was a fire, a red fire, as though you would glimpse a campfire on a distant in a distant valley. And but I was caught by the difference, and not only that, there was a sense of gloom, a miasma. I've learned a sense of dread. I think ever since we crawled out of caves, we've always feared the darkness. And so I started to turn away from this, but then something happened. The fire became greater at the bottom. And as I'm looking down, two things happened. The brightness of the fire increased, and I realized that down and looking sideways, it was as though a door had opened, a large door. And I could hear a sound for the first time. And the sound was the sound of two large doors being forced open on hinges that had not been oiled, and you could hear them screeching and so on, and just rusty. And of course that flooded more light, so I realized the light was coming from the side to the bottom. And then, to my utter amazement, something shuffled out of that doorway. The doorway was huge, and so was the creature that came out. And I'm looking down on it, and it appeared to have a form, large, round. It was on fire. Its body was on fire. Its head was squat on its shoulders, and it seemed to be searching around the bottom of this pit for something. And and then suddenly it was as though it became aware of me, and it swiveled its head around and looked up at me. And fellas, I can tell you something. The look of hatred that I saw in its glowing eyes, not just for me, but for all of mankind, will stay with me forever. On top of that, there was an odor that came out of that pit, a sense of decay, a sense of all things bad, as I said, a miasma. And I turned because I couldn't bear to look at it. But just the second before I turned, it began to scramble up the sides of that pit. Now, for its size, it was large. It moved with an amazing nimbleness. And it crawled very rapidly up the side of that pit. And I scrambled backwards, falling backwards on my elbows, and it reared up out of the pit. And I was confronted by this creature, body on fire, dripping saliva, uh, and the most horrendous face. But the other thing was there was screaming, and the screaming was coming not from its mouth. The screaming appeared to be coming from within the body. It was as though this creature, Randy, had consumed souls, and they were crying out for mercy. And it stepped out of the pit and lumbered toward me. And to keep my sanity, I scrambled to my feet and turned my back to it. And remember, I said there's 6 words. I said the first 3, God forgive me. And then I turned and I turned toward the beautiful light, and I raised both hands, and this time I cried out the next 3 words. 3 words that I had never prayed in my life. God, help me, help me. And instantly, 3 points of light appeared in the beautiful cerulean blue sky, converging toward me. One was coming from about 90 degrees, the other one from about 260, and the other one from about 310, and all converging into one. At the same time, this creature is behind me. And then, in addition to the screaming, I heard it speak my name. This creature knew me. It knew me. I wasn't that bad a person. I may not have gone to church, but I was not. What did I do to deserve this? All these thoughts were racing through my mind. And I gave to the poor if there was a tax receipt. But what did I do to deserve this? And it had a strange voice. It was in between a growl and a whisper. And I could hear it saying, Jim, Jim, we are here for you. We are here for you. Join us. Come to us. And I honestly believe that had I turned at that moment and looked into its face, I would have been snatched. But instead, I concentrated on this beautiful light coming toward me. And all of a sudden, the lights fused together, and I'm looking at this light traveling toward me, and the light washed over me. And at that point, I turned to look back. And Randy, when that light struck that creature, it screeched and screamed in agony and scrambled backwards like a rat running for cover. Darkness and evil cannot live in the light of God. It must not live in the light of God.